And we are talking about emotion and consciousness. We will be very happy just to talk with you about a few questions that we has been preparing just to understand emotion and consciousness. If you don't mind, we can go just slowly in the time that we have speaking about consciousness.
Very good.
So first of all, I would love just to start, open the perspective about that. We have different perspective about emotion. Some of the perspective are more simple and other are much more complex regarding the lens of the consciousness. What distinguishes this approach about how putting the consciousness on the field of the emotion change the field of observation? What you can say about that? Let me translate. En la neurociencia nosotros tenemos diferentes maneras de ver las emociones y una de ellas es la perspectiva de la conciencia. ¿Qué distingue ver a la emoción desde la conciencia versus a verla de una manera mucho más clásica? Please.
Yeah, so thank you for the good question. And this is a question that is very much at the heart of what we call affective neuroscience, the study of the brain mechanisms associated with emotion. And it's important to give some background and to give everyone a feel for what mainstream neuroscience says about this. And I'd like to share with you a perspective that has been given by really one of the most well-known neuroscientists who studies emotion, by the name of Joseph Ledoux. And he wrote a well-known book a number of years ago called The Emotional Brain. And essentially what he said in this book is that consciousness is irrelevant to the study of emotion. It's not necessary to take account of consciousness for the study of emotion, because he was arguing that most emotional phenomena occur unconsciously.
Wow.
So I'll pause here. You can translate, and then I have a lot to say about this perspective.
No, you are opening the fire already in this morning. Okay, so bueno, dice, gracias por esta pregunta que es súper interesante. Quisiera poner un poco un marco a la pregunta y decir que tiene que ver con el corazón de lo que denominamos la neurociencia afectiva. Y dándole una perspectiva histórica a la neurociencia, hablar de un autor que ustedes han estudiado además, tremendamente importante, llamado Joseph Ledoux. Ledoux, en uno de sus libros más significativos, El cerebro emocional, dice que la conciencia es irrelevante en el estudio de la emoción, ya que la mayor parte de las emociones ocurren de manera inconsciente. Thank you.
Yeah, so his argument is that most emotions actually occur unconsciously. And that may seem surprising to all of us because we obviously are aware of our emotions, but we're not aware of what we're not aware of. And so there is so much that is going on that we're not aware of. And his argument, it really centers those kind of affective phenomena. And at the human level, one invitation to all of you is this. If you watch a video clip of two people interacting who know each other, you will see a very high density of emotional expression. There are changes in the face, there are changes in the voice, there are changes in the body posture, and there's so much going on that it's actually not possible for most people to be aware of all of those phenomena. Particularly if you slow the video down and
Mm.
watch it in slow motion, you'll see so much that we're typically not aware of. And so these are the kind of phenomena that Ledoux was alluding to in talking about how much of our emotions in everyday life often go unnoticed, so to speak. And so for that reason, he argued, we don't really need to solve this challenging problem of consciousness. We can just proceed to study emotion, and we don't need to worry about consciousness. I have a different perspective, and I'll share that in a few minutes.
I can imagine that he feel very good with this with his premise, ¿no? Bueno, Ledoux dice que las emociones suceden mucho de manera inconsciente y porque no estamos conscientes, no somos conscientes de lo que no somos conscientes, entonces la conciencia no tendría mucha importancia para Ledoux. Esto es central en su premisa científica, ¿no? Sobre todo cuando habla del aspecto humano de las emociones. El ejemplo que pone el profesor es, imagínense que ustedes están viendo un vídeo de dos personas y en ese vídeo hay una gran densidad de emociones en el cuerpo, en la voz, en la gestualidad, en la interrelación. Y justo en la primera pasadita del vídeo podemos observar una cierta cantidad de emociones, pero si nosotros nos vamos adentrando en el fenómeno de ese diálogo y vamos deteniendo el vídeo poquito a poquito, vamos a ir viendo que surgen otros fenómenos, emociones de las cuales no hemos sido conscientes, y esa es la razón por la cual Ledoux dice que no hace falta que nos preocupemos por la conciencia, porque nunca vamos a ser conscientes de todo. Yes, thank you.
So we can ask the question, well, what role does consciousness play in emotion? Is it simply an epiphenomenon that really has no specific function, or does it have a particular function? And one way to begin to address this question is to contrast emotion that occurs unconsciously and emotion that is conscious, that is, emotions of which we are aware. And the cool thing is that in the laboratory, we can do certain tricks that enable us to convincingly show that we can elicit an emotion unconsciously, and we can also elicit an emotion consciously. And by doing that, we can systematically compare the emotions that arise with awareness and emotions that arise without awareness, and contrast them in terms of the brain and also in terms of their function.
Very interesting. Later you will explain more how you do this.
Yes.
Beautiful process, because it's very interesting. Bueno, ¿qué rol? Más bien, él dice, yo pondría la pregunta de otra manera. ¿Qué rol juega la conciencia en la epifenomenología de la emoción? Si tiene función o no la tiene, ¿no? Y en ese contexto nosotros podríamos decir que hay emociones que son conscientes y emociones que son inconscientes y jugarían roles diferentes. En el laboratorio, cuando nosotros observamos en una mirada precisa cómo elicitamos las emociones inconscientes y cómo elicitamos las conscientes, podemos hacer una sistematización comparativa entre verlas con conciencia o verlas sin conciencia, y cómo el verlas con conciencia o sin conciencia tiene que ver con diferentes regiones y funciones del cerebro. This is super interesting.
Yeah, so I can explain how we do these crazy experiments. So
Yes, please.
one way we can do this is by, I should back up and say that we know that when we present a fearful face, for example, to a person, they show a little emotional reaction. It's a reaction that is associated with changes in the body. There is often changes in the autonomic nervous system. We can detect increases in sweat on the skin using a measure that we call skin conductance. It's generated by the sympathetic nervous system. We also can show changes in the brain. And so what we do in this kind of experiment is we present the fear face and we immediately follow it by a neutral face of the same person.
Wow.
And we present the fear face very, very briefly, and then it's followed by a longer presentation of the neutral face of the same person. And the experience of a person watching this, the phenomenological experience, is all they see is the neutral face. That's all they see. So we can present the fear face for about 30 milliseconds. That's 31 thousandths of a second. And then we follow it by a neutral face for 1 or 2 seconds. And all they see is the neutral face. But yet the preceding fear face affects them. If we present faces of people they've never seen before, of strangers, and we precede the neutral face by a fear face versus a happy face, what we see is that participants rate the neutral face as more anxious and less friendly. They're less likely to trust this person if it were preceded by a fear face compared to a happy face, even though they have no idea that there was an emotional face that was presented. It's completely unconscious. And so this is a way that we can study unconscious emotion, and we can do this in the scanner and look at what's going on in their brain.
Wow, this is super interesting experiment. Let's go to translate. Bueno, ha explicado un experimento que se realiza con una emoción que es una cara súper enfadada, una cara furiosa, ¿no? Entonces, imagínense una cara furiosa, con lo que eso lleva la emoción reactiva correspondiente, el cambio en el cuerpo, el sistema de sudoración, cómo altera el sistema nervioso simpático y parasimpático, los cambios en el cerebro. Se pone todo eso muy claro, primero midiendo qué impacto tiene la cara enfadada, y luego se pasa a una cara neutra y qué impacto tiene la cara neutra. Entonces, primero se comprueba la diferencia entre la una y la otra, y después se pasa a alterar el tiempo de exposición, como la cara enfadada tiene una exposición más cortita y la cara neutra una exposición más larga. Y la experiencia es que las personas no ven la cara enfadada, no la perciben, solamente perciben la cara neutra. La primera cara sería como 3 milisegundos y la segunda entre 1 o 2 segundos. La experiencia es que no la perciben. Sin embargo, cuando se hace este experimento no con personas conocidas, sino con personas desconocidas, cuando es la cara enfadada de un extraño y la cara neutra es sobre felicidad de ese mismo extraño, lo que podemos observar es que la persona se fía menos del extraño, aunque haya tenido el mismo tiempo de exposición, porque hay un bias inconsciente sobre ese proceso. So this is very interesting. Do you think that we have some kind of bias about emotions and foreigner faces and on people that we love that we recognize in some level?
Well, yes, there certainly are biases of all kinds that can be shown in these kinds of paradigms that are quite unconscious, very deeply rooted. But the But before we get to that, let me just say that these kinds of experiments have revealed something very important about the role of awareness. And that is when we're aware of an emotion. So when the experiments are done so that the fear face is presented without the neutral face following it. So a person is aware of it. The awareness has the capacity to regulate the emotion. And so one fundamental role of consciousness or awareness in emotion is to regulate it. One of the things that we often say is that the capacity to know what is happening in our mind is essential for our capacity to regulate our mind. If we don't know what's going on in our mind, then it really impacts our capacity to regulate what's going on in our mind. So emotion regulation is possible because of awareness or consciousness. And this is why emotion regulation is far more well developed in humans than it is in any other species. Now, it's also the case that the very same mechanisms that give us the capacity to regulate our emotions also give us the capacity to dysregulate our emotions.
Exacto.
So just as humans have the greatest capacity to regulate their emotions, they also have the greatest capacity to dysregulate their emotions. And I think it's fair to say, although to the best of my knowledge, it's never been studied, that the prevalence of mental health disorders is far greater in humans than it is in any other species.
Because of this, because the capacity of regulate and dysregulate.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's go to translate this. Yo le había preguntado que si evidentemente tenemos un sesgo frente a las caras conocidas versus a las desconocidas, y él dice, claro que sí, sí que lo tenemos, pero antes de avanzar en eso vamos a seguir con lo que estábamos, ¿no? Cuando nosotros somos conscientes de una emoción, cuando podemos reconocer que hay una emoción de una cara que está cabreada, que está enfadada, y una cara que es neutra, también podemos empezar a ser conscientes de que podemos regular la emoción de ser conscientes, y esa conciencia y la regulación de la emoción es determinante. No solo es determinante regular, reconocer la emoción, sino poder regular el reconocimiento de la misma. La capacidad de regular en la emoción sucede porque nosotros ponemos conciencia a lo consciente, y esto es algo que está mucho más desarrollado en los humanos de lo que lo están en otras especies. Si nosotros tenemos capacidad de regular las emociones, no es menos cierto que tenemos capacidad de desregular las emociones, y en eso los humanos somos maestros. Y podemos decir que la prevalencia, ¿por qué la prevalencia en grandes problemas de salud mental se da más en humanos que en otras especies? Justo por esto que acabamos de indicar, por la capacidad de desregular las emociones. Yeah,
So I should just say one or two more things about this. When we talk about awareness of emotion, we of course recognize that emotions are multifaceted. They're multidimensional. They include changes in the body. They include changes in the mind. They include changes in our perception, in our attention. And there are all these different elements. And so when we talk about awareness of emotion, we really, the invitation is to try to be as specific as possible about what specific aspect of awareness we're talking about. And If we're talking about a kind of global awareness of emotion, that means being aware of all of these different facets of emotion simultaneously. And I suspect that only with mind training or contemplative training would a person really be equipped to recognize all of these different aspects of emotion simultaneously, because there is a lot going on, so to speak. And one aspect of this is being able to notice changes in the body, which is a process that scientists call interoception. Interoception, and that is the capacity to notice things like your heart rate changing or your breathing. Those are interoceptive processes. And that's a very important element of emotion. And it's been found that people who are alexithymic, who have a deficit in the capacity to verbalize emotion, also seem to have a deficit in their capacity for interoception.
Wow.
And so the problem is that they have in verbalizing emotion may stem from a more fundamental problem in being able to recognize the bodily changes that occur in emotion.
This is super interesting. Thank you. So let's go to translate. La emoción se constituye en multidimensiones o en multifases. Podemos decir que la emoción se construye en el cuerpo, en la percepción, en la atención. Y cuando hablamos de conciencia y de emoción, podemos verlo desde muchísimos aspectos. Entonces hay que preguntarse desde qué aspecto lo estamos viendo. Pero podríamos decir desde un aspecto global, si habláramos desde la globalidad, que la emoción y la conciencia se dan en fases simultáneas de la experiencia, donde solamente podemos ser conscientes de que así es porque tenemos un entrenamiento en reconocerlo. Por ejemplo, en el entrenamiento de la mente o entrenamiento dentro de las tradiciones contemplativas, nos ayudan a ser conscientes de todo lo que no somos conscientes. Y uno de los aspectos importantes que ya hemos tratado, ¿verdad?, es la interocepción, que es la capacidad de reconocer, de poner atención a lo que pasa dentro de mi cuerpo. Por ejemplo, la capacidad de sentir el latido de mi corazón, la respiración, el sudor, y eso es muy, muy importante al reconocer las emociones. Podemos decir que aquellas personas que no sienten eso tienen menos capacidad de reconocer las emociones. Por ejemplo, pensemos en la alextimia, que es la capacidad de no poder verbalizar nuestras emociones. Esa no capacidad de reconocer la interocepción está relacionada con no reconocer nuestras emociones y por tanto no poder regularlas.